The big banks are set to be put under the microscope following Treasurer Josh Frydenberg's calls for the competition watchdog to investigate the banking sector over its refusal to pass the RBA's interest rate cuts to customers in full. Investigative journalist and author Tom Ravlic dives into the issues of the banks in his new book. What did we learn from the Banking Royal Commission, Tom?
Well, Peter, there are several things that we have learnt from that, one of which is corporate culture needs to be monitored very, very closely. There are a series of examples from the Hayne Royal Commission that were quite clear across the entire financial services sector, including within the CBA, the NAB, the ANZ, where it was clearly demonstrated by Commissioner Hayne and his team that the banks had not monitored their staff properly, and that there was an intense focus on selling rather than taking greater care of their customers. So profits were a greater consideration in many respects than monitoring what the personnel were doing and how the people were faring in terms of paying off loans and other things like credit cards. It was a big, ugly mess.
Tom, that was a big criticism from this Royal Commission, and that was that the banking sector were putting profits before people. Can you give me some examples of that?
Let's look at the case study that started it all, which I cover quite well in my book. If you remember, Jeff Morris, the CBA whistleblower, spoke to the Parliamentary Committee in 2013, 2014, about the fact that the financial planning arm of the CBA spent a lot of time pushing people to sell product. Now, what happened in that situation was particularly dastardly. They engaged in a failure to disclose all of the aspects of the transactions that their clients were going to be involved in. And when things went bad, they started to conduct what I call in the book industrial scale document fraud, sanitise client files in order to make inappropriate advice look as if it was appropriate. So they were retrofitting client profiles, etc., to ensure that they didn't look as if they made the decisions for the client in the first place.
Tom, do we think that Commissioner Hayne went far enough in his recommendations?
He was asked to inquire into misconduct. He wasn't asked to inquire into every single aspect of the financial services sector. And there are some things that he could not do within the scope of his remit. I mean, he can't change corporate culture within the banks themselves. So I think the outcome of the Hayne Royal Commission, given the limitations of the way in which the federal government drafted the terms of reference, was reasonable.
Now, the NAB's Ken Henry, the chairman, former chairman, and of course Andrew Thorburn, former CEO, they were the major casualties from this Royal Commission. Do you think there'll be more casualties along the way? And we've seen, you know, the problems that exist at AMP. Are you tipping that there will be any further punitive measures?
Look, any time there's a major focus in the corporate sector, you will see people resign, you will see people removed. I think some of the more interesting issues will emerge over time when ASIC begins to take people through the courts. We'll see some of that unfold in the coming weeks and months, no doubt, and that'll be where other scalps will gradually unveil or emerge, more to the point. And the Commonwealth Bank has, over a period of time, changed its internal staff. So anyone monitoring the CBA's media release feed will have noticed that there were significant changes made to the Commonwealth Bank's own internal staffing arrangements.
The banks at the moment are under a lot of pressure for not passing on Reserve Bank interest rate cuts. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the banks need to worry about several things here, one of which is managing the expectations of the community in the light of Hayne. But the other issue that needs to be highlighted, Peter, is that they are a business and they've got to make commercial decisions, and they're the only ones who can make that call. So there's a fine line between passing on the full rate cuts and also wanting to make the decisions that are going to suit the business in the long term. I guess the question is whether the government and anyone out there wants banks to be forced by law to pass on those particular rate cuts without any kind of decision-making in their own right. I think that's an important question. We raised that issue, but do we want banks to be regulated more toughly in that respect? I think we'll see that emerge over the next little while with the ACCC inquiry and media commentary over time.
All right, Tom Ravlic's new book, Vulture City, How Our Bankers Got Rich on Swindles, is out today at your local bookstores. All right, now to some of the top newspaper photos from around the world. And first up, this photo